of the entire river corridor. And we also have a couple others that of late that most folks aren't familiar with, and these are the canvas canoes that were David Rust's. Some were used up in Glen Canyon, at least one was used down by Phantom Ranch, and we actually found two of them up in the shelving in the warehouse at Glen Canyon National Recreation Area. And we saw those two, and we had one that was on loan to the Museum of Green River, and we said, you know what? Those all look alike. And we brought them all down, and they are indeed part of it. They were used between the 20s and the 30s. Apparently Rust had some earlier canoes that we don't have, and Gaylord actually was really helpful at trying to ferret out where exactly these came from. But we do have 3 of these now in the collection. And most folks who have been down the river are familiar with the Ross Wheeler, the boat that Bert Loper built but was stolen from him and ended up down at the foot of Bass. And it still is there today. Moving right along, 1938, the Wen, Norm Neville's Expeditions, Mexican Hat, the Wen. Those are 2 boats in the collection. The Mexican Hat is up on display in Green River. The Wen is the first boat that we've been able to put back on display. In the Canyon View Information Center, which has recently been renamed the Grand Canyon Visitor Center, so everybody knows what it is. 1941, the first kayak. It's a rubberized canvas kayak that we went down, had little outriggers on it. It was part of the Neville's trip. Flip here again. Watching them pack up here at Lee's Ferry to get ready to go downstream. And again, you look at the boats, and it's amazing what they were able to carry as well and how well they did this. And you know, the boats over time, the structure, the technology improved, and each generation had a new invention that went along with it. You're not going to see much crashing in this one. Looks like fun, then, doesn't it? So we move from the rowing boats into an era where we start seeing a little bit more motorized use. The Esmeralda up top was the first power boat to go down the river. It tried to go upriver too, but they figured they better go downriver first. You know, it had some successes until it didn't. And yeah, it's now in our collection, and it's good. It did have one funnel run out towing, I guess, the Neville strip out of the canyon. Georgie over top right, beginning after the World War II, the pontoon boats. And then the Gem. This is probably the best photograph we could find of that boat. It really was the missing link between sort of the cataract-style boats and moving into the full dories, and it actually is a pretty important part of that history. This boat, actually, we're just getting information. Tom Martin is someplace, I think, out here, and he actually is the keeper of a lot of the knowledge on this, but we're pretty happy to have this out of Kolb's garage and into the process of doing some sort of conservation work to be able to tell its story as well. Little fun off the Georgie trip. And it's amazing how these boats took so many people downriver for so long. And again, the evolution of boating and the story that it can tell in terms of how we access the Colorado River and rivers in general. And here's some footage of the Gem. So not quite the Norm Neville's cataract boat, not quite a dory. Some pretty good runs, though. And then we move into some additional boats. I mean, the collection really spans the period of time from 1909 to the early 1960s. The first kayak, 1960. We have two of the three jet boats that actually made it all the way from Lake Mead back up on the uprun. The Dock, which is the balloon up top, and the Wee Red, which had been in storage at Glen Canyon until we moved it up to the South Rim earlier this year, actually late last year. Music Temple, the first dory, and the little sport yacht, also called the Dock, which was used in 1963 by Doc Marston when he was photographing sort of the conditions of Grand Canyon, the Colorado River, just as the gates of Glen Canyon Dam were closed. And I am sorry that this is not on the screen because it was when we checked it out before the program. But we have 19 boats all told in the collection, beginning with the Stone boat, going down to the Cole brothers, the Ross Wheeler, the Glen, the Canoes, the Wen, the Mexican Hat, the Escalante, the Esmeralda, the Georgie boat, the Gem, the Dock, and then we read the Kayak, the Music Temple, and then the Sport Yacht. And each and every one of them has a story to tell. There were some early displays. The Stone boat and the Neville's boats, as you can see, were on display early on in the park. Let's see if we can get this back. There we go. One of the questions we often get is, how many boats do you have, and whose were they? All the boats came into the collection, many of them from their original owners or from the families who donated them to the park afterwards, after their use. But most folks are familiar with what they looked like in the courtyard at the old visitor center. They were stored / displayed out in the courtyard. The building itself was built in 1958. Many of these boats went into the courtyard shortly thereafter because they were already in the park collection. And at some point, there was a breezeway that was closed in, and the boats were kind of stranded inside. So what we were really dealing with is taking the boats from the courtyard and moving them into a better situation. Being outside, the elements, the snow was always an issue. The freeze-thaw, the wet, dry, people climbing in them, garbage in them, animals using them as homes. All of those things were problematic, and for years we had tried to get them out of the courtyard and actually get them into a conservation setting and into inside storage and actually on a display where they wouldn't be outside exposed to the elements. We had the boats that were in the courtyard. We also had the Wee Red at the bottom, which was up at Glen Canyon, and unbeknownst to us, until we started doing some research on this project, we actually did have in our collection the Dock, which had been repainted and became a National Park Service boat, but none of us realized that that's what it was, until Brynn and I went up to Glen Canyon to look at the Wee Red, and this is another one of those, this looks really familiar. So we got back to Grand Canyon, took our photographs, went into the garage where this one was stored and said, looks like we have two of them, which was kind of nice. But here they are in the courtyard and beginning the process. And again, many of the folks who are here helped with this move, so they should bring back some fond memories of a really bountiful day, I guess, where we actually got to move the boats, put them on new handcrafted cradles that were made for each boat by Brad Demick. They're beautiful. And the thinner, smaller boats, and basically these three, were easily moved out. I say easy, it was relatively easy. To move them out and put them in trailers and took them over to the conservation workshop.